Hello, welcome to Sales War Chest podcast, an opportunity to learn more about growing revenue in uncertain times. And today's guest is special guest. We have Monique Surges from the German New Zealand Chamber of Commerce, where you are the Chief Executive Officer. Welcome, Monique.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful to have you here. And of course, there's a lot that we've been hearing in recent times about opportunities overseas. And as a small country, New Zealanders are always looking for new customers offshore. So it's great to have you here to share about some of those tips to get your sales and business development happening in far off lands, specifically in Germany and in the EU.
Happy to be here, and hopefully I can open people's eyes to the EU market, because it's not necessarily the first destination that New Zealand companies think of.
Yes.
So, the more I can do, the better.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. And how did you come to be the Chief Executive Officer at the German New Zealand Chamber, Monique? What was your career path?
I fell into it. I sound like a Kiwi, but I'm actually both a Kiwi and German. So
yes.
After my fifth stint of living in Germany, I came back to New Zealand via the Dominican Republic, and I'd been working for German companies for quite some time. Came back to New Zealand and thought, well, gee, what does one do in New Zealand with the skills that I had? And it just happened there was a very small office organisation called the New Zealand German Business Association, which is our predecessor, and they were trying to get a division off the ground to represent German trade fairs, and I had done a lot of work in the trade fair scene in Germany during my time in Germany, working actually for companies who exhibited at shows. That's where I started. So I sort of basically built up their trade fair division and then moved on from there.
Oh, brilliant. Wow. And so how long have you been involved now with the German New Zealand Chamber?
Since 1993. So how many years that is? I stopped counting at 25.
Well, 1993 was a particularly good year. So I do remember that year, although I didn't hear of the German New Zealand Chamber at that point. But
you've obviously vocal.
Yes. Well, you've obviously had time to develop the voice. And, can you tell me a little bit about the German New Zealand Chamber, Monique? What sort of businesses do you serve, and do you have an idea on your number of members and sort of things going on?
I mean, basically, we are a little bit under the radar. I'll be honest about that. We're really we're not as loud as many other organisations that have maybe a broader span. We're very focused on companies that have an interest in the German-New Zealand trading relationship. So everything we do is focused around helping companies in that relationship. So obviously the 130 German subsidiaries that are here in New Zealand, they're a big priority for us to make sure that they're happy and sorted. And we're trying our best to encourage more German companies to look at the New Zealand market to increase that list. We're actually the largest EU membership organisation in New Zealand by quite a long way, because firstly, the number of German companies that we actually have here, they're all under the radar to a large extent as well, but it's actually one of the highest numbers of subsidiaries of any country. Wow. But we also look after the New Zealand side of the equation. So New Zealand importers who are sourcing product from Germany, and also New Zealand exporters who are looking to get into the German market. So we're very bilateral, and that often surprises people, I think, because they sort of imagine that we're sort of the trade arm for Germany, doing only things for Germany. But Germany believes in balanced trade. They believe that it's actually best to have as much incoming as outgoing.
Wow.
That's the theory.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's good. I suppose though too, with COVID and supply lines having been disrupted, you're probably dealing at the moment, I'd imagine, with a few people who they might have established relationships, but is there difficulty getting freight in and out for the
It's been a real eye-opener. It's not just freight, it's people.
Of course.
Side of things has probably been the really hard part. We had a number of top management people who happened to be out of the country in March last year.
Wow.
Doing budget negotiations and the like, who couldn't get back into New Zealand. And it's taken, well, the first one got back in December. So from March through to December, they had to do their New Zealand job from Germany. So that's probably been our biggest issue we've been dealing with. And the supply chain, I mean, it's not just our companies or our members that are hit by the supply chain issues. That's a global issue, but it's also probably a little bit dominant in New Zealand because, well, we're at the start of the world. We're in that little corner there that people seem to just go past, and a lot of the shipping companies have been getting a little bit of flack because their schedules are skipping New Zealand, and that makes it just that much more difficult.
Wow. So I suppose too, like provided that we can actually get access in and out, which I know everybody's working on. What is it about Germany and the EU that you really think would be helpful for New Zealand companies to consider them as a potential market if they're looking to grow their own business interests?
Yeah, well, I mean, the EU in itself is actually, I mean, it is an incredibly important market for New Zealand. It's actually your number one or number two market, believe it or not, but more from an import side, so products coming in from Europe. Going out, obviously, the focus is on closer markets, but the feedback I get from companies who have made it into the European market is that it's once you're there, it's a very steady, ongoing market. It might take a while to grow and get in there, but once you're there, it's there to stay. It's not something that's going to go, up and down, and that gives companies the stability they need, then go into more developing markets. So, Europe's a very established, very traditional market. Hard to crack, but once you're there, it's really good.
Yeah. And with the obviously the German language skills, you would probably help people with that side of things. And I guess too, perhaps the different cultural ways of selling into a different nation, such as Germany. Is there a lot of help that you provide in that side of things?
A lot of people don't listen to that side of it.
Okay.
It's not till something goes wrong that they come back to us and go, "What did I do wrong?" So the more we can help at the start, the better.
Yes.
The language itself is not really a barrier. I mean, every German learns English at school. It's compulsory to learn English, and obviously people who then don't go into international trade probably drop their English to some extent and only use it when they go on holiday. But the people that New Zealand companies will be dealing with, on the whole, speak extremely fluid English. So the language is not really the issue. It's the New Zealand language is difficult for the Germans to understand. We find we're more often translating what a Kiwi is saying and what they mean to a German side of the equation. So we'll get involved in I wouldn't call it mediation. It's just sort of the lost in translation that sometimes happens.
Yes.
But there are certainly areas that we do try and highlight. So New Zealanders and Germans are actually very like-minded, and it's one of the reasons why we think it's a very good market for New Zealanders to export into, because they tick in a similar way to you. They're not, there's not a lot of extreme difference. It's just there are some differences, and they're quite important to understand. So the famous one, of course, being punctuality. Germans are real sticklers for being on time, and being on time is normally 5 minutes before you actually arrange a meeting. And even with conference calls, that seems to have been the norm as well. It's been quite interesting to watch. But also deadlines are not to be moved. If they are to be moved, you'd say that right at the start of the agreement when the deadline will be, not a day before the deadline is to be hit, stuff like that. So we actually run a workshop series, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We use some really great bits of material like the life swap videos that are sort of 5-minute videos that show the differences between Germans and New Zealanders in a funny way, so you remember it. And I'll quite often go around the room and do certain little activities with the customers, because at the end of the day, often it's those really subtle things that they actually don't know they're doing wrong.
No.
So going into a meeting with dirty shoes in Germany is just a complete no-no. How many Kiwis look down at people's shoes? Not a lot. Germans wear shoes all the time.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, that's quite interesting, because I was going to ask you, in terms of actually selling to German customers, how can Kiwi companies run a sales process that just wows the German customer all the way? And so you're already touching on some of that, aren't you, with the punctuality, making sure you don't move your deadlines. It's and the word wow is probably that sends alarm bells in itself, because Germans don't actually like to be wowed as such. So they don't want all that this is the most awesome, amazing, all the superfluous type terminology actually turns them off. They want facts. They want to know what things your product is going, what are the background facts on that product? How many people has it been sold to already? What's it going to do for their efficiency? They want hard facts and figures. That's going to be the best sell that you can give them. Is don't create something that definitely don't promise something that's not true. That you cannot deliver. Really, really important. They're incredibly honest in that respect. That it's more an under deliver than an over deliver. I mean, in times like COVID, of course, we have to manage this in a slightly different way, because that also taught the delivery of a product. When you're trying to sell, and a distributor in Germany will be pretty skeptical at the moment as to whether you can deliver when you say you can. So our advice at the moment is to actually tack on 10 days, and then they'll be lovely and surprised when it actually arrives early. But don't try and sell a product on we can get it to you in 10 days, or it's in normal times maybe, but at the moment you've got to be very careful about what you're promising and what you actually can deliver, and keep it honest. The other thing to remember is that Germany is actually 16 countries. So it's 16 federal states, and we call them countries because they speak differently, they think differently. Have different if you look at Bavaria, where Julia comes from, they are very, very fiercely proud of Bavaria. And Bavaria, of course, is famous for many things, including the Oktoberfest, but also it's a bit of an IT area, and it's a very wealthy part of Germany. So there's agriculture there through to tech. They've really got a good diversity. That market in itself is enormous. So you could say, as a company, I'm actually just going to focus on one state. Wow.
So you don't actually have to look at the whole of Germany. Germany's got 82 million people. That's a lot of people. Definitely. So it's the biggest country in the EU by population and also by GDP. It's the fourth largest country in the world as far as import-exports concerned. Exports is actually third largest. So it is a big country, but if you break it down a little bit more, so we've got one export company, Bobucks, they do children's shoes. And when they first went in, they just looked at Germany as a whole. And then they realized that actually they had certain areas of Germany where their sales were doing better. So they then analysed that a bit further, and by using the likes of Facebook, etc., they were actually able to zone in on Hamburg, for example, large city in northern Germany, and really focus their sales. So Hamburg is a marine, it's on the water. There are certain attributes that are particular to Hamburg. So they tailored their marketing to actually help grow sales in the Hamburg area.
Wow.
So part of what we need to do with companies is actually work out, so which parts of Germany might be the better ones for you to target
Okay.
product into.
Wow.
It just depends on the product.
Well, that's just good business development anyway, because you could say, oh, look, everybody in Germany is my customer, but with 82 million people, there's obviously so many sectors in there and segments within segments. So
absolutely,
if you can define it really carefully, you're going to actually obviously save on your marketing and sales resourcing and have a much better return on your investment of your time and any money.
That's right, absolutely. And you know, it's we quite often have this discussion about so traditional market distributors, so middlemen tend to be the way to go. They don't warehouse, I might add. They just distribute, but they don't warehouse products. And this is something New Zealand companies need to understand, that there is a step in between where you need to decide, okay, how am I going to get my product to market? Am I going to use, I don't know, main freight service where they pick and pack for you, or how am I going to do that side of it? Because the distributor is not there to do that. The distributor is there to be your vocal piece in the market, so your marketing machine, I guess. And you may find that you have one in northern Germany and a different one in southern Germany. Just because of the differences in the market.
Yeah. And so obviously a lot of our product-based exports are really, that's a key market for them. What about some of our service industries or even software? Is that something that's got a similar trajectory, or is that still developing a bit more? Or
so, I mean, companies, famous ones were like Navman was a perfect example. You didn't see the product. It was actually, it was in behind the Volkswagen navigation system. I mean, Navman did extremely well into the European market. And of course, actually, they did even better when they then sold out and became a European company. Life, can't do much about it. One I've been a little bit frustrated with is Zero. I've thought that Zero would do extremely well into the German market, but they have pretty much sort of compliance issues, because obviously they have to be able to deal with the tax system, etc., of each country they enter into. And Germany is, because it's so large, because there are so many people, it is, and because of the German psyche, I guess, it's heavily regulated. So anyone in the service sector has to understand the regulations. And I mean, they're EU regulations, but there's often a layer on top of German bureaucracy, which is, GDPR is a big, perfect example. Germans take it to the nth degree. It's there to be followed. The customer's privacy is absolutely paramount. So service companies, even if they're collecting the data back here in New Zealand of customers, they are still obligated to follow GDPR regulations. So that's a perfect example of one of the areas where service companies can slip up a little bit. So they're a little bit shy, and we'd like to see a lot more of that happening. It's just, I think New Zealanders just don't think of Germany as the first market to go into for the service sector, other than education. So Education New Zealand, up until COVID hit, Germany was one of their most important markets. So we had around about 6,000 odd school children, college level kids from Germany here every year. And then there's about 15,000 working holiday visas that were issued every year to young Germans who came here to either work, study, or do an internship. So that was a service sector. Obviously, the tourism sector was another biggie, but that's ignored completely now.
Oh yes, it's tough, isn't it?
I think though the main area which is the really positive for New Zealand companies. Most New Zealand companies are trying to produce a product of a high quality.
Yes.
And believe me, Germans will pay for high quality. I mean, they do the reverse to you. They sell you German cars, and they're certainly not the cheapest, but they are high quality. Or a Miele oven or a Bosch dishwasher, they're high quality. So it's much easier than in the reverse. If you're selling high quality food and beverage products or health products, they'll be prepared to buy them and pay really high prices for them. So it's a good market. You don't need to discount into it. You can actually aim at the top. And I think that's a really important thing to remember when looking at the German market compared to, say, the US market, where there's maybe way more competition, similar products, and quality is not necessarily the priority.
No. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, of course, COVID has completely changed the business landscape, and there are opportunities springing up in spite of all the devastation that it has left over the last 12 months. Yeah. What sort of opportunities, Monique, do you think are opening up in the German market that perhaps Kiwi companies should be considering at this time?
Yep. Some of them are opportunities that were actually there before COVID, but they've just become more dominant, I guess. Yeah. So, as I said, the food and beverage side of things is definitely a priority. But I think it's, you could probably say this for most of the world at the moment, the focus is on healthy.
Yes.
Whether it's supplements or organic, or it's not just food and beverage, but it's the next step on. It's the delivery of something that's better than just the average food and beverage. Yeah, that's definitely an area of focus. And I think also a lot of the products from New Zealand that are of a natural nature. So whether you're talking skincare ranges, that is an area where the knowledge or the belief that Germans have of New Zealand is always pretty solid. And you can literally sell your product on the back of that. So anything that is natural, organic's even better, but that's a bit of a regulation nightmare. And the other area is anything for the aged population. Wow. So Germany has an aging population. Part of the reason why they're so badly hit by COVID now is the fact that they have a very, very high percentage of older people. And these people need services and equipment and all sorts of things that companies can deliver to them to make their life better, to help with their medications. There's a couple of very cool New Zealand startup companies that I've dealt with recently who have been tampering with the German market, shall we say, and they make little widgety things that go on the ICU pack.
Right, wow,
just to control the flow better. There's all sorts of interesting, innovative things going on in that area, and New Zealand's quite good at this stuff because this is not mass production. This is small production, unique production for a unique sector.
Yes.
So I would never say everything should be exported to Germany. I would be very selective about what products I think should be going to Germany ahead of other products, I guess. So it's but those are the two areas mainly. I mean, obviously Germany's a massive exporter, and they need componentry for all sorts of things, but they've obviously been looking at their whole situation, and they're not necessarily buying everything from one supplier anymore. They've been burnt from that, so they'll be looking at more suppliers, but I'm not sure whether that's an area where New Zealand is strong in.
Okay, but it does sound like some opportunities are opening up, and I suppose if there's a business listening who is wanting to take a fresh approach to their sales and business development, and you're looking at serving overseas customers, probably some very good customers in the German nation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be brutally honest. If I don't think it works, I will be brutally honest. So I won't waste people's time.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, now you're based in Auckland, aren't you, Monique? Auckland, New Zealand. Yes. But of course, actually the background, of course. But you serve people all around New Zealand. So if somebody is listening and thinks, should I be checking out how can I get into the German market? what's the best way to get hold of you potentially?
Probably at the moment email, because we are doing an office and home office, so email seems to be the fastest way to get us. So msurges, MSURGES at germantrade.co.nz, and that's our website as well. Just go germantrade.co.nz.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
There as well.
Oh, lovely. Well, look, hey, thanks for joining us on Sales War Chest. We are going to be continuing to explore lots more ways that companies can grow revenue in uncertain times, and of course, looking at the opportunities that present. Thanks, Monique, and we'll see you all again next time.